Hey, welcome to In Dark Places. It's finger licking good. This week we got Kyle Lovern back on the show. We're going to be talking UFOs. Jimmy Haunted is out on holiday this week. One time, back in the old world, on October 18th, 2016, I took Brandon to a circus, and as we were going in, something that looked like the space station was flying over. It was flying toward the east, like the space station is supposed to do. But I kept thinking that something seemed off about it. It was a little bit bigger, and it seemed to be curving off toward the south. And then it started drifting to the north, and then back to the east. It changed direction several times while we watched it, and one time it just completely went into the opposite direction without even slowing down. It was going one way and then just suddenly started the other way. So we don't have that kind of technology, I don't know. The circus started at 7:30 and we were running late like we always do. It was like 7:35 by that point, and we could hear the circus music playing inside and everything, so we finally just went inside. But I wish I would have just stayed outside and kept watching that thing. It was weird. And here's what's going on in the news this week. This story was sent in by our friend James. Brazilian Air Force pilots chase 15,000 mile per hour craft in the night of the UFOs. By Claire Reed. Thanks, Claire. 5 pilots were left baffled after seeing 21 brightly lit objects appear and disappear during Brazil's so-called Night of the UFOs back in 1986. Alongside the pilots, hundreds of troops on the ground also witnessed the unusual phenomenon, which left force officials admitting there is no explanation. Over the course of several hours, hundreds of people saw the objects that moved at high speed in the sky. While pilots claimed to see objects in front of them that didn't appear on radar systems, Traffic Controller Sergeant Sergio Moto de Silva was one of the men working on the 19th of May, 1986, when the incident unfolded. He was the first to see anything unusual, spotting a bright light in the sky near the city of Sao Paulo. He said, "It doesn't go up or down. It doesn't go to the left or right. It's just standing there." After seeing the bright object, he got in touch with controllers at Sao Paulo's International Airport to ask if any planes were due to heading toward his airfield, but was told there was not. He claimed the lights dimmed as they moved toward the control tower and brightened as they moved away. He added, "Whether they were trying to interact with me, I do not know. What I do know is they behaved intelligently." Later that same evening, around 2,000 cadets and officers from a nearby Air Force training school also reported seeing lights in the sky. The numerous sightings prompted the country's Air Force to send pilots up into the sky and to try to intercept the objects, but they were unable to do so as the lights didn't behave in a normal way. Moto de Silva said, "Sometimes the pilots had visual contact with the targets, but the radars did not register anything. Other times, the radars even picked up the presence of objects, but the pilots could not see them." Brazilian UFO researcher Ademar Jose Javiard said aliens with intelligence immensely superior to ours were responsible for the incident. He said the UFOs did not want to attack, but simply played cat and mouse. The bizarre events of the night were leaked out and a press conference was held, during which pilots who had witnessed the object spoke about what they had seen. After testifying to what they say, Air Force Minister Brigadier Octavio Julio Maria Lama admitted there was no explanation for the incident. The night of the UFOs is likely to be brought up again later this week, as the Brazilian Senate is set to hold a hearing into UFO activity. Stay tuned. Cruise ship captain describes her UFO encounter, by Diana Logan. One of the best arguments for the existence of UFOs is that many of the people who report having seen them are very reasonable, rational, trustworthy people. Military pilots or cruise ship captains, the kind of people who are very down to earth and matter of fact. They aren't claiming they know what they saw or that it's definitely aliens. They are just telling you what they saw and how they absolutely have no idea what it was. They aren't claiming they know what they saw or that it's definitely aliens. Take this cruise ship captain who has documented several UFO encounters as she sails the high seas. In the video, cruise ship captain Kate McHugh shares a story of one of the many unidentified flying objects she's managed to record at work. She describes going out onto the deck at sunset to take a picture when she saw a large black jellyfish-looking thing moving through the air 3 times as fast as the wind down the center line of the ship between the stacks and off the stern. There, it descended into the water. It did not behave like a balloon, as it moved faster than the air around it and moved in strange directions. And I'll put a link for her video on here. Captain McHugh is remarkably calm through the entire story. She offers no explanation for what she saw, because the answer is she doesn't know. The object did not pose a danger to her ship and disappeared before her team could investigate it. Videos of McHugh's other UFO sightings are readily available on her TikTok and Instagram pages, which I'll also put links for. And now here is the Nicolas Cage meltdown of the week.
Did you plan for it to get back to Patty, huh?
Well, I guess I did. Kind of thought about it.
I would have never been able to think of something like that.
I know. Rusty James, if there were still gangs around, I'd be president and not you. You'd be second lieutenant. You know, you might have made it a while on the motorcycle boys' rep. But you ain't got your brother's brains. You've got to be smart to run things. It's nothing personal, Rusty James. But nobody would follow you into a gang fight. Because you get people killed. Nobody wants to be killed.
I guess you're right. Nobody wants to get killed. So you really like Patty, huh?
Yeah. Even if she wasn't your chick, I'd still like her.
It's all yours, man.
Don't flatter yourself.
Rumblefish, 1983. Kyle is the author of Appalachian Case Study, UFO Sightings, Alien Encounters, and Unexplained Phenomenon, Volume 1 and 2. Kyle Lovern is back on the show this week. Kyle, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing? Oh, I love this summer weather, even though it was got pretty hot there last week, and then we had the storms, of course, later in the part of last week. Knocked a lot of power out for people, but it's good. You know, glad to be back on the show, and thanks for asking me.
Yeah, that storm was a mess. I hated winter so bad, and winter drug on for so long. These 90-degree days don't bother me a bit.
Yeah, if I had to choose between 0 degrees and the 95 degrees, I'll take the warm weather, because at least you can get out and do some things, you know. Go out early in the morning and or later in the evening, like you said. If you got a garden, you can get out and grow things and piddle around with that. It's much better than being cooped up inside with snow and ice.
Yeah, I hate being cold.
Yeah, same here. But how's the Appalachian UFO Research Society page going? I know you keep up with it more than I do, and get a few reports but I hope people will be more willing to report their sightings on our Facebook page. I mean, it seems like people are starting to be less leery about reporting now because it seems to be commonplace. You've got the government coming out now with the UAP videos from the military and admitting that they've been looking into the UFO situation for several years, and I think the stigma and people being a little afraid to report that they saw something is going away, and so people are more apt to, if they have a sighting or a situation, to report it.
Yeah, I was listening to a show last night. A guy saw a UFO back in the 70s, and he told his family about it, and they ridiculed him and picked on him for years, and they'll send him little Christmas gifts as jokes now about Roswell and everything. He said he's had a miserable life, but it's good that it's flipped around now and it's more open. People don't really bother anybody about it anymore.
Yeah, there's still a few skeptics that may tease a little bit. I know, when I wrote my books, there was probably a few people that wondered what in the world, but I'll have people stop now and say, hey, I saw something, or have you heard anything lately, or had any sightings? I think the majority, a greater percentage of people believe there's something to it now than in the past. And so that's good, and it's good that more people will report their sightings, and maybe we'll get to the bottom of this and find out the reality in the near future.
We've been getting a few clear nights here the last few nights after the storm was over, and I saw some, I don't know if they were satellites or what. They're a couple nights ago, they were pretty much everywhere, zigzagging around.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of satellites up there now, a lot of space junk from over the years. But the night that the power was out, I went out, and so you didn't have that night pollution, no street lights or anything. You could really see the stars. It reminded me of when I was growing up, living out in the country. You could see a lot better. It was more clear, a lot more stars. And now it's harder to see unless you go out in certain places where there's not as much city lights or houses that with the light pollution, you can see better. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I've been loving them clear nights. You can see them real good. We seem to be getting a few more reports coming in recently on our page. There's a lady up in Nitro, West Virginia, that sees tons of stuff. She's always writing to me on Facebook, telling me that she sees stuff, and she'll send me little videos. And she's got all kinds of activity going on just in general in her house. Has a bunch of ghosts and poltergeist type stuff, and she'll see weird vehicles around her driveway and stuff all the time. She's got some freaky stuff going on up there.
Wow. Some people seem to have more for some reason. Seems like sometimes if they're a contactee, that they'll get more, continue to get sightings or encounters. I had one person say they thought they saw a Sasquatch recently, but there wasn't a whole lot to the story. Just her and another lady were walking up a road, and said it was near dark, and something pushed the bushes back, and it was tall and dark and hairy, and they saw it and took off running.
Oh, wow.
Said they went back and got their car and drove back up there and didn't see anything. So, man, I wish you had got a picture or got more info. They said, well, they were a little freaked out, and they said it was too dark probably to get a picture with the cell phone. But, yeah, and that was local, too. That was over in Pike County, Kentucky.
I've got a buddy at work. He'll go out ginsenging and stuff, and he's seen all kinds of signs of Bigfoot, and he saw some big footprints and stuff too around the little pond.
Yeah.
And he sent me a picture of that. It was a big, deep imprint in the mud, just a bare foot, and toes and everything visible, and it went deep into the mud. You could tell it had a lot of weight to it.
I'd like to see those pictures. It's an interesting phenomenon in itself. West Virginia has had a lot of sightings over the years, and Kentucky. And the one TV show, the Expedition Bigfoot, they came to near Whitesburg, Kentucky, and Pine Mountain, and did a whole segment on Bigfoot research in that area, like 2 or 3 shows. And it was pretty interesting to watch. I know before you and I started recording, we were talking about the Skinwalker Ranch. I've been watching that, new episodes of that on History Channel. That's a really interesting phenomenon, I think. The Skinwalker Ranch out in northern Utah. I heard about it a few years ago from a fellow author, Steve Hammonds, who lives out in Phoenix, Arizona area, but he's originally from Ohio and went to Ohio University. And he told me, asked me if I ever heard about the Skinwalker Ranch and Skinwalkers, and I hadn't. And he told me about it. I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. Now a lot of that's coming out. And you had former owner Robert Bigelow, who very wealthy man who owned the property at that time, did his own study of that property, and he, of course, is an entrepreneur and interested in aerospace, had his own company, Bigelow Aerospace. Now it's owned by a guy named Brandon Fugel, and he's continued, has experts there, scientists, and they've been doing all kinds of tests and trying to figure out what is so different about this ranch, you know, and there's a lot of UFO activity there and other paranormal things, and of course the Skinwalker is something that the Native Americans came up with, a Navajo legend that's a sort of a shape-shifting half wolf, half human creature that roams, and you know, they tracked, even on this show that they have on TV, they were tracking some footprints, and then they just disappeared. It's like it went into a different portal or a different dimension, which is one of the theories of that property and that basin. It's about 512 acres total on that property, a big ranch, and they've got security and, like I say, different experts that spending time there and doing all kinds of experiments, and it's pretty, very interesting. Very interesting. I'd love to be able to visit it.
That would be fun. I remember I heard about that on Coast to Coast. I can't remember if it was Art Bell or George Norrie talked about it years ago, and I kind of just tucked it away and didn't think nothing else of it. And then the show came out. It's a good show. I think those guys in the Exhibition Bigfoot, they'll be the ones to catch anything. They use all that technology and everything, so they'll be the ones to find it.
Yeah, they're very scientific in their research and their experiments, and they had a lot of strange things happen. They've got some videos with some strange orbs on there, and a lot of times they're out there and they have just started, and their equipment should be charged up with the batteries and so forth, like their computers and whatever, and it'll just die for no reason, you know, which is strange in itself. But they've been able to do a few things, and they've talked to some past people that worked on the ranch and who had some really weird experiences, and saw some very strange things on that property over the last few years. So, you know, and I think there's other areas in the world like that. There's just something about this area, you know, that, like I say, whether it's a portal or to another dimension or just a place that UFOs visit for some reason because of the magnetic pull or drive. I mean, it's really, really interesting. I hope they can get to the bottom of it.
I kind of get that from Bigfoot. Like everybody, all these Bigfoot sightings and stuff, it's like they just disappear. I think they go through portals or something too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird because you'll see footprints and maybe branches broken or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's just, there's nothing there. It's like it's gone all of a sudden. But yeah, that Expedition Bigfoot, they've done some pretty good scientific research. They found what they thought were nests where like something had taken branches and made a bedding, and found a few footprints themselves. And you know, these folks are paleontologists and they have their doctorate degrees, and it's very scientific. They're not just everyday folks. Pretty interesting. They broke down the old the video of the original video from the early '60s that the guy got in Northern California, and they had it and had an expert look at it and break it down. And and so there's definitely not a hoax. That I think it was 35 millimeter.
Yeah.
That was very very good, and said there was something to it. You could just tell by the gait, the way it walked, and they tried to figure out the height of the creature and so forth. And it's pretty cool now with computers and stuff. They can do a lot more, enhance some of those photos and old videos and that there is. But there's so many sightings all over the world, and both with Bigfoot and UFOs. And I mean, there's just too many people that have seen things and seen trace evidence, like you said, landing spots for UFOs or footprints, broken branches for Bigfoot, Sasquatch. That seems like there's something to it.
People always try to say that Patterson film is a guy in a gorilla suit. And there ain't no way, because you can see too much definition now with those computers.
Yeah, it's not a gorilla suit. You can just tell the way the shape of the head and how long the arms are and the stride that it takes. It's pretty neat. Now, I think it's legit. I'd love to see somebody get some new footage with a modern-day camera with a high definition. That'd be neat.
Yeah, that would be good.
But people say, well, why don't they? People see them all the time, or hunters. But things can be elusive. If they want to be, and they're nocturnal. A lot of times they don't come out except at night. And some of these forested areas that we have, and other places like in the Pacific Northwest, there's pretty. There's not very many humans even there, and if they want to hide, they can.
Yeah, there's plenty of places for them to hide, and they know the woods a lot better than what we do, so they got plenty of hiding places.
Yeah, and they can sense, probably got a stronger sense of smell and hearing and so forth, so,
We've been getting a few emails on our UFO group page recently. Somebody texted me this morning on my regular cell phone number. I guess they found it on Facebook. This is hot off the press. Location, about 10 miles south of Wheeling, West Virginia. Last Thursday, we had a series of severe thunderstorms in the area and a beautiful sunset that made everything glow orange for an unusual 20-minute duration before dusk. Also, some unique cloud formations. There was additional storms that were passing south of the area, which made for an interesting light show in the sky. I opened my front door to let the cool night breeze in from the passing storms. I just finished reading my children a story and looked at the clock, 10:01 p.m. I told them it was time to get ready for bed. As they went in to brush their teeth, I was sitting in my living room on the couch. I have a window across the room with the covers gapped open. I was watching the lightning, and then suddenly an object passed quickly over the top of the hillside that's in front of my house. It had 3 large, very bright lights. They were steady, but also had a flicker and a blinking red light in the center. The object was large in size and caught my attention immediately, which brought me to my feet when I saw it stop and hover with a slight turn as if it was watching the storm. As I jumped to my feet, I yelled for my daughter and went out the door to my front porch. The object was hovering in the sky for 2 to 3 minutes as we watched it. It was a couple 100 yards away from the front of my home. I could tell it was large, at least the size of my home. It appeared to be rounded in the front by the shape of the lights. It was dark and the lights were bright that I couldn't make out details. I fumbled for my phone, a cheap iPhone 6, to try to take a picture. Unfortunately, my flash must have been on when I took the picture, to which I think it saw us. I quickly videoed, and within 16 to 17 seconds into recording, the object takes off toward us and flies over my driveway. It had no sound while it hovered, but I could hear a sound as it passed by us. I could tell it was large in size, but the lights were blinding, as well as my driveway pole light and awning on my porch. I saw a quick glimpse of an odd middle-like bottom. I'm moving in the video, which makes it hard to see it hovering, and it appears smaller in size, but it was at least the size of my home, if not two. I will send you the original picture and video, then a couple I zoomed in on from the video. Earlier that day I took a picture of the storm, which shows you the front of my house and can give you perhaps a general proximity. I'll put the pictures and video in the YouTube version of this episode so you can check it out there. I live a few miles south of Sherrard. When I first saw the object out my window, it was moving from south to north over the top of the hillside in front of my home. I noticed the size being much different than the planes, helicopters, etc. that pass over. I could tell it was low and close. I actually saw a plane going east further off in the distance. The three distinct lights caught my attention immediately, and I watched it come to a stop in its movement. I thought it looked like it may have slightly turned. Honestly, at that point I jumped up to my feet, convinced and in shock as of what I was seeing, and yelling for my daughter. As I stood on my small front porch in amazement, asking the kids if they were seeing this, it continued to hover for a few minutes before I took the picture at 10:04, followed up by the video at 10:05. I'm certain this wasn't a plane in direct flight at my home being distorted by the night sky. It went south to north, stopped and hovered for a good 2 to 3 minutes, which from the hillside to my home would have gave it plenty of time to have passed by from the point of me seeing it. It was windy in the video, but at the last second or two of the video you can hear the sound close to your ear. It sounds like a swooshing sound, sort of like a plane engine, but I remember thinking definitely not the same. Not near as loud as an engine, and more airy, if that even makes sense. My home is slightly more elevated than the hillside in the front. In the first few seconds, when the object quits hovering and starts to move, it kind of moves quickly upwards and slightly angled as it moves toward my home and driveway. But it didn't zip by quickly, nor was it extremely slow. Definitely low, approximately 200 feet above my driveway. My home is not large, about 45 feet across, so I would compare it to at least the size of my home, to possibly 2 in size. The object was moving east as it passed over toward the Pennsylvania direction. In more detail of what I was able to see as it passed over, it was not a shiny silver metal that I saw. The red blinking light cast a glow on the bottom of it, and it was sort of bronze-like in color, and possibly textured, not smooth. But I did not mention the shape I thought I saw because I was second-guessing myself, especially because my daughter thought she saw a difference in shape. I was getting a quick, what I felt like, blinding glimpse, blocked by its lights, my pole light, awning, and house. Anyhow, I said to my daughter as it was passing over that I thought it looked like a boomerang. There is a small access road almost adjacent to my home. The road goes down into the valley between the hillside and back up to a gas well. It's not a large and extremely active site. It would have been hovering basically over that road. So yeah, what a cool sighting. And when she mentioned being able to see the texture on the bottom of it, that reminded me of my wife's sighting that she had back in '95 when she lived in Dayton, Ohio. There's a big, huge triangle basically right over top of her trailer. Her and her brother were home, and they looked out the window and saw it. And it covered the whole sky. They couldn't even see the sky because this thing was so huge. It was sitting there like right on top of the trailer pretty much. And they could see like a texture on the bottom of it. It seemed like little designs and stuff on the bottom of it. So that was a cool little detail that the witness gave.
Wow. That's a weird one. Definitely a pretty good detailed story, sighting. funny you said that. I had on Facebook, on my personal page, somehow they found out about me on that. And close to where you live here, and where I live, a couple months ago, a lady reported a sighting in Chatteroy Hollow, and that was pretty neat. And you know, it was a daytime sighting too. Her and her husband both saw it, and she seemed, you know, had it pretty good with the report of what she saw, and was willing to talk about it. Like again, more people are seeing things and are more willing to talk about it. Where in the past, if they saw something, they probably like, I'm not going to say anything because people are going to think I'm crazy or whatever. But not anymore.
Yeah, that's good. I've not seen anything in the daytime here in a while. I had a few good daytime sightings.
Seems like 90% are at night or more, but you know, there's a few. I know my wife had a real good daytime sighting a few years ago, and then of course I had that one it's been about 10 years ago. That mass sighting we had in this area.
Oh yeah, 10 years.
Daytime, you know, time flies. Coming up October will be the anniversary of that. But
yeah, that one's still not really been fully explained. They tried to say those balloons, and that's just nonsense.
Or yeah, an internet balloon or something. But yeah, MUFON I think finally came in and said, no, it's officially a UFO. We can't explain it. And that was good. And that's all you know. Hey, at least admit it if you don't know what it is. Say that, you know, it's a UFO, unidentified flying object, or a UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, as they call it now. I think the government tried to come up with something new to get away from the UFO stigma. I know we got one there from Clarksburg, West Virginia, just recently in April 2022. This guy had a sighting, said he saw two crafts on a ridge, and they just disappeared. Said he was traveling home one evening around 2 o'clock in the morning. Said there was a huge cigar-shaped craft emitting a sort of a rainbow-colored light arrangement. Said the craft was approximately 30 feet off the ground as he approached it with his vehicle, and it seemed to notice his presence and shined a bright bluish-green light directly at him, and didn't seem threatened by his presence. However, he was aware of being there. After a few moments, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, the craft shot up a few hundred feet and took off in a northeast direction with no sound emitting as it took off. So there was a low audible buzz or humming sound was present while it was hovering. And that's a pretty good report there on our UFO page.
Yeah, that's a good one. That reminds me of that one that one of our group members saw one time. She saw a big triangular UFO out in her mom's yard and kind of heard that buzzing sound. Yeah.
Sometimes it seems like if you're close enough there and they're hovering, there's maybe a buzzing sound. A lot of times there's no sound at all. But looks like he might have had another sighting around the same area too later. So that it's pretty. There's definitely some good eyewitness accounts out there, and we'd like to hear more from people that see them anywhere in the Appalachian area, or anywhere. If you're listening to us, anywhere in the United States or other areas, we'd like to hear the reports. There's another one a little bit later in May of 2022 this year in Huntington, West Virginia. It says if you zoom in, you can send a picture of video. I think you saw the video. So he saw something in the southern sky as he was walking his dog, and he said he had seen stuff almost every night. And he wanted to know if anybody else had seen anything. He said it was near I-64, Interstate 64 there in Huntington. And said you could hear a little bit of noise in the background. There didn't seem to be any flashing lights on it. But I don't know, did you see the video to that one? I didn't get to see the video to that report. But.
Yeah, that one made me think a lot of this span of time, like in 93, that I saw, like for a 6-month period, I would see just about every night some kind of a weird changing color thing like that. And it just seemed like it was always rocking back and forth. I would watch it almost every night in the same place. It was like it was just studying our atmosphere or something. It was weird. And then just suddenly I never saw it again.
I know you had those sightings, I think 3 or 4 years ago, you called them moving stars. You saw a lot of things for a while.
Yeah, I saw a ton of them. They would always get real bright. They would move along pretty much a straight path, but sometimes they would kind of zigzag too. And they would always get real bright, and then they would just disappear after they got bright like that. And Brandon said that they were shooting off into the atmosphere and leaving our orbit and stuff whenever they did that. And I was like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of those too. It made me think those things I saw a couple nights ago might have been those, but they never did do the bright thing. They just kind of faded out. So they might have been satellites that I saw that night.
Yep, that's definitely interesting. I'm always looking up. I know a lot of people, like one guy told me one time, he said, who had a couple of sightings, he said, I don't think a lot of people actually look up. And I think he was right. A lot of people just don't pay attention. Of course, when you're driving, you should be looking ahead, but, so there's times you can glance up, or if you're just out walking your dog or out for a stroll day or night, glance up. You never know what you might see, and might have a good sighting yourself.
There was a guy over toward Phelps, Kentucky that used to work at Food City. He had a little pond out on his four-wheeler trail he would go up on all the time. And he had his one winter, he took a picture of the pond. It had like weird designs on it. It made me think of like a crop circle type thing. It had I could just imagine a UFO over top of it, kind of etching into the ice, because it didn't look like it was natural.
Seems like a lot of times UFOs, for whatever, hover over water or even go into the water, and we've talked about that before. So I could see that happening. People have seen landing sites where there's an imprint, perfectly circular, round, even scorched or earth, or pushed down into the grass or the hay fields or whatever. And I'd love to see something like that. I've not been lucky enough. I don't guess you have either, to see a landing area or a crop circle or whatever. But maybe we'll eventually get lucky enough to see that around here in their area.
Yeah, I'm always on the lookout.
Yeah.
There was a guy, my first case that I did with MUFON, he's up around Nitro, West Virginia too. And he had a crop circle out by a creek, I think it was, or maybe a river, where he would go fishing all the time in his like a john boat, and he would go by and he'd see like a crop circle there over around all the brush and stuff over on the side of the river. And he said that nothing would ever grow there. He saw it like so many years before, and then the next year there was still nothing growing there. And I always wanted to go up there and check that out, and never did take the time to. And I saw that he passed away last summer, so I guess I'll never get that chance now.
I know. Yeah, sometimes we get busy with our lives. We have to work and have families and so forth. It's just hard to be nice if we could do that as a full-time as our job and get paid for it. We would definitely hit a lot of these areas and look into some of these things. I had a story told to me. I went up there for a UFO convention that was held in St. Albans, which is right across the Canal River from Nitro. A few years ago, that's where I got to meet Stanton Friedman and become friends with him, who's going to be honored, by the way, this July. Of course, he passed away a couple years ago out at the Roswell convention that they have every summer. They're going to honor Stanton Friedman, and I'm glad to see that.
That'd be cool.
Because he's one of the first ones to really write about that Roswell case and break some of the information that had never been revealed before. But anyway, I'm getting off track. But I was up there, and it was another guy that had used to work in the media like me. He worked in radio. And he was telling me that he was talking to a policeman that was working for Nitro, the city police. And there's a lake there in Nitro. I guess it's like a little state park or city park, pretty good sized lake. People fish and picnic, whatever. And he said, the guy was out on patrol at night, like third shift, probably like 2 o'clock in the morning. And he goes up there because I guess things happen sometimes in those kind of places. So they cruise around up to the lake, and he was up there and he saw a UFO hovering right over that lake.
Wow.
And you know, this incredible witness. And I asked him if he thought that he would talk, and he said no, he won't talk about it to anybody. He wouldn't. You know, again, especially at that time, you know, the stigma and people, you know, people are skeptical about those kind of things. But it sounded like a really good story. I'd love to hear more details from the guy that actually saw it, the police officer that actually saw it. And then I heard about a policeman here in Mingo County a few years ago that was out on third shift like that and saw a huge UFO hovering over downtown Williamson one night.
Oh, wow.
And he said he even called like the Air Force or tried to report it. And, you know, that's somebody that you and I need to try to talk to. I think he's getting up there in age, but if he's still around, maybe see if he would talk to us about it. And that's one that I'd filed away in my brain for future reference, and maybe we could get a hold of the guy and see if he'd talk to us about it.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to him.
Yeah.
And Nitro, it seems to be a pretty good little hot spot there. We need to get up there sometime, too.
Yeah, it does. For some reason, I don't know. Well, you know, Nitro, the reason it was named Nitro was from nitroglycerin. Back in World War II, they were making nitroglycerin there. You got the chemical plants off and down the Canal Valley there. That's where DuPont got its name, the town of DuPont, DuPont High School, and Nitro was from nitroglycerin all up and down through there. You had they made stuff for the government and the military, you know, chemicals and nitroglycerin, and just like up at in Mason County near Point Pleasant, the TNT areas and those concrete pads they had out there where the Mothman sightings were. That's what they were making up there during World War II. So for some reason, West Virginia was a hotbed of those kind of factories back in during that era. Of course, they're all shut down now, but it makes you wonder if that was why those areas were attracted to the, you know, UFOs or paranormal.
That's why I was thinking there's a lot of factories and stuff up that way, so maybe they're drawing energy from that or something.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. Or they were just curious on what are these folks trying to build here or make.
I've got an uncle that lives up that way, and he was talking a couple of years ago. He saw one around Institute, West Virginia, up that way.
Just not much farther from, yeah, well, Nitro, St. Albans, all those areas are real close together.
He saw some, I can't remember a whole lot about it now. He saw some red lights around one of those plants up there, around the factory. So it's a pretty weird little place. Saw a bunch of USO reports from there too, the underwater unidentified submerged objects.
Yeah. You'd gotten a report, I think it was near Huntington, Ashland a few years ago. Somebody saw one that went into the Ohio River, I think. It sounded real interesting.
Yeah.
USO.
Yeah, it was up that way too.
Yeah. And again, I've had a lot of reports on the Tulsa Highway, we call it US 52, between here and Huntington, Wayne County, and down through that area, and the Cabway-Lingo State Park, and the towns up and down that area. There have been a lot of sightings down in that area for some reason. Of course, there used to be a big power plant there, and it was a coal-fired power plant, but there's a lot of sightings around power plants, it seems like, that people will see UFOs hovering over power plants, whether they're nuclear or coal-fired or whatever energy source they have. And like you said, maybe they're drawing energy from those power plants, or they're just curious on what they are, and they're just checking us out, doing a little bit of investigation. So that's what these humans are up to now.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. It's good stuff.
So, yeah, it's good to see people that are taking it serious and are interested in it, you know.
About 3 weeks ago, there was a UFO festival out in Whitfield, Virginia, that was dedicated to the Danny Gordon UFO sighting in Whitfield.
I think you and I both have the book that was written about that, and there's documentary filmmaker down there who taught film, and Sean Kotz is his name, in colleges down there for several years, and he was working on a documentary about that, and he came down and interviewed me, but I think he'd gotten a little bit held up on it for whatever reason. He actually came back again and did some fresh interviews, get some fresh film. Probably 3 or 4 years ago. He'd done it a few years ago. And different, again, working a full-time job and trying to get the money to do the documentary, but I thought it was going to be a really good one. And I hope he's able to finish that documentary, because that was a really good case from the 1980s, the Whitfield, Virginia sightings. There was a lot of stuff going on down there, and hundreds of people, witnesses that saw some strange UFOs in that Whitfield, Hillsville, Virginia area, and you could Google it and read some about it, but pretty interesting. I mentioned it a little bit in one of my books, because you had a radio news guy that really got involved in it and went out and saw some himself, and so good, credible witness, and he documented some of it, and he was contacted even by the military himself.
That was the first case that really got my attention on Unsolved Mysteries. I'd heard about Roswell and everything, but I never really put a whole lot of thought into it, because I just went along with the government's explanation. It was a weather balloon, that ain't nothing. And then one night I was watching Unsolved Mysteries, and I saw him talking about the Whitfield UFO, and that thing just scared me to death, the whole story. That's what got me hooked on UFOs for the rest of my life.
That's pretty close. That's a little closer to us.
Yeah, I was just hooked for life once I saw that one.
Yeah, there was not as many shows back then about the subject or books as we talk about, but now you've got a lot more. So, but you're like me, I remember hearing about that one, and I think it was Unsolved Mysteries, and thought, wow, that's pretty close. And
our friend James got me a shirt from the festival. I wasn't able to go to it, so thanks again, James. Awesome shirt. It's hard to believe it's coming up on the 35th anniversary, October 7th, 1987.
Time flies.
At Roswell, we were talking about that. It's it'll be their 75th anniversary for that one, won't it?
I know, man. That's hard to believe, but yeah, they always have that festival there, which would be really fun to go to.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
If we could ever get out there, it's pretty far away.
The first time I found Art Bell, I was listening to the radio. I was just playing around one night. I was telling our friend Steve about it. I was telling him about how I found Art Bell. I was just accidentally listening to the radio, trying to figure out on my AM band how far away I could pick up what kind of stations and stuff. And I picked up this station out of Chicago. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. I got a station all the way from Chicago. I started listening. It was Art Bell, and he was talking about the 45th anniversary of Roswell. And now it's going to be the 75th anniversary. It's just
I remember
crazy.
getting Time magazine, I think it was, or Newsweek. It was the 50th anniversary of Roswell, and they were doing a story on it. And now, like you said, 25 years later, yeah, I just found the Stanton Friedman official fan page on Facebook, and they're calling it the Walk of Fame out there. It says Stanton will be honored in Roswell's new Walk of Fame. They'll have a ribbon cutting ceremony to kick off this year's Roswell UFO Festival, and like you said, the 75th anniversary, 1947 to 2022. That's amazing that time flies.
Yeah,
but that's usually in the first week of July they have that. So
that's what I was going to say. It'll be coming up here in the next week or so. So if you're in the area, check that one out. That'll be good. I'd love to get down there.
Yeah, maybe one of these days. Maybe we could fly out there. It'll be a long drive.
Yeah, I think I looked into driving before. It was like 22 hours or something, so that's out of the question.
Yeah, it's too far. You got, they have a few up in Pennsylvania every year, which we know a couple of those guys that continue to have those, and there's your buddy Fred Sluga has some stuff in West Virginia. Every so often he'll have a UFO or Bigfoot conference on a Saturday in different parts of the state. But, yeah, we've got a lot of things we still on our bucket list we can do.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle Lovern, for coming back on the show again. It's great. It's good to catch up and talk about these crazy UFOs. I've been fascinated with this all my life.
Yep, me too. And we'll continue to do so till the end, I hope. Hopefully we'll know something, know the truth one of these days.
Yes, sir. And that's about all the big show for this week. I want to thank Kyle Lovern for coming on again and talking about these crazy, kooky UFOs with me. We'll see you again here next week. God bless you guys.